Let's get to it. 10. Noah's Ark, the Abrahamic Standard. Picture the scene. It's not just rain, it's the atmospheric collapse of the entire planet. The sky turns a bruised purple, the fountains of the great deep burst open, and everything you have ever known, your neighbors, your cities, the very ground you walk on is erased by a rising wall of gray water. You are trapped in a wooden box, listening to the muffled screams of a dying world, with only the smell of wet fur and fear for company. This isn't just a Sunday school story about a petting zoo on a boat. It is a tale of absolute, terrifying isolation. This is, of course, the account of Noah found in the book of Genesis, the cultural touchstone for the Western world. The specifics are drilled into us, a divine command to build a vessel measuring 300 cubits long, made of gopher wood, pitched inside and out. It's a mechanism for survival against a moral cleansing, a hard reset button pressed by a creator disgusted with the wickedness of man. For 40 days and 40 nights the water prevails, covering the highest mountains by 15 cubits. Finally, the vessel rests on the mountains of Ararat, a dove is sent out, and humanity reboots from a single family unit. It is the definition of a global cataclysm. But here is where the skepticism kicks in. To the rational mind, fitting two of every species onto a boat the size of a modern football field is a logistical impossibility, a biological absurdity. However, the true mystery isn't the zoology, it's the universality. Why does this exact nightmare scenario, a righteous man, a big boat, an angry god, and a drowned world, appear in cultures that never met, never spoke, and were separated by thousands of miles of ocean? Is it a coincidence, or is it a repressed memory shared by the entire human species? 9. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the Sumerian prototype. In 1872, a man named George Smith was sitting in the British Museum, staring at a jagged piece of clay. He was deciphering cuneiform tablets dug up from the ruins of Nineveh. Suddenly, he jumped up, rushed around the room, and began undressing himself in sheer excitement. What he found wasn't a grocery list or a tax receipt. He had found a story written over 1,000 years before the Hebrew Bible was penned, yet it told a story that was suspiciously, uncomfortably familiar. He had found the original blueprint for the apocalypse. This is the Epic of Gilgamesh, specifically the account of Utnapishtim. In this Sumerian version, the gods, led by Enlil, decide to destroy mankind simply because we are too noisy and they can't sleep. The god Ea warns Utnapishtim to tear down his house and build a boat. The parallels are surgical. Utnapishtim is told to take the seed of all living things. He builds a massive vessel, though his is a perfect cube. The storm rages for 6 days and 7 nights. He releases a dove, then a swallow, then a raven. When the raven doesn't return, he knows the waters have receded. He lands on a mountain and offers a sacrifice. The discovery of this tablet shattered the Victorian worldview. It suggested that the story of Noah wasn't a divine revelation given solely to the Hebrew prophets, but a recycled narrative, a cover song of a much older Sumerian hit. Skeptics argue this proves the Bible is just mythology, but believers in the historical flood argue the opposite. If two completely different cultures wrote down the same specific details about the same event, doesn't that make it more likely that the water actually rose? Imagine you are a king, washing your hands in a river. You scoop up some water and suddenly a tiny, frantic fish in your palms starts speaking to you. "Save me," it pleads, "and I will save you." It sounds like the start of a Disney movie, but in ancient Vedic texts, this is the prelude to the end of the world. The fish isn't just a fish, it is Matsya, the first avatar of the preserver god Vishnu, and he has come to warn that the universe is about to be dissolved. The account, found in the Satapatha Brahmana and the Mahabharata, is strikingly precise. King Manu saves the fish, placing it in a jar, but the fish grows unnaturally fast, from a jar to a tank, to a river, and finally to the ocean. In return, the fish warns Manu of the coming deluge that will destroy all life. Manu is instructed to build a massive ship. When the waters rise to swallow the earth, the fish, now colossal and sporting a giant horn, appears again. Manu ties his ship to the fish's horn using a serpent as a rope, and the avatar guides him through the turbulent, world-ending ocean to the safety of the northern mountains. Manu, along with 7 sages and the seeds of all life, survives to repopulate the earth. This myth throws a wrench into the idea that flood stories are purely about punishment for sin. In the Hindu tradition, the flood is cyclical, a natural cosmic rhythm of destruction and rebirth, distinct from the moral judgment of the West. Yet the core elements remain stubbornly identical: a warning, a vessel, a savior, and the preservation of life seeds. It forces us to ask, did a real event happen that was so traumatic it was interpreted through the lens of every major religion on Earth? Welcome to the Aztec cosmology, where the universe isn't a gift, it's a terrifying, unstable machine that keeps breaking down. According to Aztec mythology, we are not living in the first world, we are in the fifth sun. The previous four worlds were all destroyed in horrific cataclysms: jaguars, wind, fire. But the destruction of the fourth sun, the world known as Nawi Atl, is the one that should keep you up at night. It didn't just kill humanity, it fundamentally altered what humanity is. The ruler of this era was Chalchi-Yutlekwe, the goddess of water. The sky itself made of water collapsed, crushing the earth. It rained for 52 years. The deluge was so absolute that it didn't just drown the people, it erased the boundary between man and nature. The myth states that the gods, in a moment of twisted mercy or perhaps mockery, transformed the drowning humans into fish so they could survive the watery abyss. A man named Tata and his wife Nene were instructed by the god Tezcatlipoca to hollow out a great cypress tree and hide inside. They were told to eat only one ear of corn and not to light fires. This is where the story takes a sharp, bizarre turn from the Noah narrative. When the waters receded, Tata and Nene, starving and impatient, caught a fish and grilled it. The smoke offended the gods. Tezcatlipoca descended, kicked their heads down onto their shoulders, and turned them into dogs. It's a jarring shift. In the West, the survivors are the heroes. In the Aztec world, survival is just the beginning of a new punishment. It suggests that the trauma of the flood was so deep in the Mesoamerican psyche that they believed humanity had to physically devolve just to endure it. 6. Deucalion and Pyrrha, the Greek reset. In the Bronze Age of Greek mythology, Zeus, the CEO of Olympus, looked down at humanity and realized his product was defective. Men were arrogant, violent, and impious, so, like any ruthless executive, he decided to liquidate the assets. He didn't send a plague or an earthquake, he decided to wash the slate clean. He enlisted his brother Poseidon to strike the earth with his trident, while he opened the heavens. The goal was simple: total extinction of the human race. Enter Prometheus, the titan who loved humanity enough to steal fire for them. He warns his son Deucalion of the incoming boardroom purge. Deucalion and his wife Pyrrha build a chest, a larnax, and stock it with provisions. For 9 days and 9 nights, the world is a washing machine of destruction. They eventually land on Mount Parnassus, the only dry spot left in a drowned world. Lonely and terrified, they ask the oracle of Themis how to bring humanity back. The oracle gives a cryptic, horrifying command: throw the bones of your mother over your shoulder. Deucalion, being the smarter of the two, realizes the mother is Gaia, the earth, and her bones are stones. They throw rocks over their shoulders. The stones thrown by Deucalion morph into men. Those by Pyrrha become women. This is a profound twist on the flood narrative. In other myths, the survivors breed to repopulate. In Greece, humanity is reborn from the hard, cold earth itself. It serves as a mythological explanation for why humans are so hard-hearted and resilient. We are literally made of stone, born from the debris of a destroyed world. 5. The new myth, the Pacific isolation. Let's travel to the most isolated landmass on planet Earth, the Hawaiian archipelago. Thousands of miles of open ocean separate these islands from Mesopotamia, India, or Greece. There was no internet, no mail service, no cultural exchange with the Near East. Yet, when early missionaries arrived, prepared to teach the locals about Noah, they were stunned to find the locals already knew the story. They called him Nu. The legend tells of a man named Nu who lived in a time when the world turned wicked. A great flood known as Kai Akahina Li'i came crashing down. Nu was commanded to build a great canoe with a house on it. He filled it with his wife, his 3 sons, and pairs of every breathing thing. The waters rose until they covered the earth, and the canoe eventually came to rest on the summit of Mauna Kea, the highest peak in the Pacific. After the flood, Nu looked up and saw a rainbow, which he interpreted as a sign of forgiveness from the god Cain. Skeptics and anthropologists often argue that this myth was contaminated by early contact with sailors or lost explorers. It fits the biblical narrative almost too perfectly: the name Nu, the 3 sons, the rainbow. But native oral historians insist the story is ancient, predating any contact. If that is true, we are left with a staggering implication. Either the flood story is hardwired into the human brain as a Jungian archetype, or a specific group of people carried this memory across the largest ocean on Earth, preserving the trauma of the rising waters in their oral traditions for thousands of years. 4. The Younger myth, the Dreamtime serpent. Now we go back deep into the Dreamtime, the sacred era of creation for the Aboriginal people of Australia, a culture with the longest continuous oral history on the planet, spanning over 60,000 years. Here, the flood isn't a punishment from a man in the sky, it is a reaction from the earth itself. It involves the Wabalog sisters and the great rainbow serpent, Younger. The story goes that the 2 sisters were traveling and camped near a sacred well. One of the sisters gave birth and her blood flowed into the water. Deep below, the rainbow serpent awoke. Enraged by the pollution of his sacred space, Younger rose up. He didn't just bring rain, he sucked the water from the well and spewed it into the sky, mixing it with a storm to flood the entire landscape. He swallowed the sisters and their children whole. The flood covered the earth, wiping out the landscape before the serpent eventually regurgitated the sisters, transforming them into rocks. This myth is radically different in tone, but identical in function. It links the flood to a violation of nature laws, specifically regarding blood and water. But here is the scientific kicker. Aboriginal oral history has been proven to accurately describe geological events from the last ice age, including the rising of sea levels that swallowed immense amounts of Australian coastline 10,000 years ago. The rainbow serpent flooding the land might not be a metaphor, it might be an eyewitness account of the post-glacial sea level rise that destroyed the ancient coastlands of Australia. 3. The Unu Pachacuti, the Incan overturn. High in the Andes Mountains, where the air is thin and the ruins are massive, the Incas told the story of a time before true humans. The creator god, Viracocha, first made a race of giants. He carved them from stone, but they were a disappointment. They were unruly, too big, and they refused to work. So Viracocha decided to hit delete. He initiated the Unu Pachacuti, literally translating to water overturn or time-space reversal. For 60 days and 60 nights, the rain fell. It wasn't just a storm, it was a cleansing solvent. The massive giants were swept away, drowned in the torrents. Viracocha saved only 2 people, Manco Capac and Mama Oklo, though versions vary, by sealing them in a cave or a stone box. When the waters receded, they emerged at Lake Titicaca to found the new, smaller, more obedient race of humans. The twist here is the giants. Why do so many cultures associate floods with the destruction of a giant race? Paleontologists suggest a fascinating possibility. The Andes are rich in megafauna fossils, giant sloths, mastodons, massive bones that look humanoid but are far too large. Perhaps the giants were the ancients finding these bones, and the flood was the only logical explanation for why such powerful creatures no longer walked the earth. They constructed a myth to explain the graveyard of monsters beneath their feet. 2. The Bergelmir myth, the Norse bloodbath. If you thought the other myths were violent, leave it to the Vikings to make it a horror movie. In Norse mythology, the flood isn't made of water, it is made of blood. At the dawn of time, there was only the primordial giant Ymir. The gods Odin, Vili, and Ve, seeking to create the world, attacked and killed Ymir. The result was a massacre so absolute it changed the cosmos. Ymir's wounds gushed so much blood that it created a catastrophic deluge. This tide of gore drowned the entire race of frost giants, Jotnar. Only one giant, Bergelmir and his wife managed to survive. They scrambled into a luder, often translated as a hollowed-out tree trunk or wooden box, essentially a coffin boat. They rode the waves of their ancestors' blood until the flow subsided. From this pair, all future giants descended, harboring an eternal hatred for the gods who tried to drown them. This myth reframes the flood entirely. It's not a weather event, it's a war crime. It's the result of a divine murder. In the Norse worldview, the earth is the corpse of Ymir. The oceans are his blood, the soil his flesh. The flood wasn't an interruption of creation, it was the act of creation. It suggests that existence itself is born from trauma and violence. It's a metal myth for a metal culture, reminding us that order is often built on a foundation of chaotic destruction. 1. The Black Sea Deluge Hypothesis. The payoff. We have traveled from the Andes to the Himalayas, from the outback to the Arctic. We have seen the same story told in a dozen different tongues. Skeptics call it coincidence. Believers call it faith. But in the late 1990s, two geologists, William Ryan and Walter Pittman, proposed that it was something else entirely. They proposed that around 5600 BC, the myth actually happened. Here's the science. 7,600 years ago, the Black Sea was a freshwater lake, isolated from the world's oceans, surrounded by fertile farmland and thriving human settlements. To the south, the Mediterranean Sea was rising due to melting glaciers, pushing against the natural dam at the Bosphorus Strait, modern-day Turkey. One day, the dam broke. It didn't just leak, it exploded. A terrified slurry of salt water roared through the strait with the force of 200 Niagara Falls. The water rose 6 inches a day, forcing the people to run for their lives, abandoning their homes, their livestock, and their dead. The coastline retreated by a mile every single day. Recent underwater expeditions by Robert Ballard, the guy who found the Titanic, have found ancient shorelines and potential structures hundreds of feet beneath the current Black Sea. The twist? The survivors of this very real trauma fled in all directions, north to Russia, south to Mesopotamia, west to Greece, carrying with them the story of a water wall that swallowed their world. The flood isn't a myth, it is the PTSD of the human race, a memory of a bad day in 5600 BC that we have been trying to process for 7,000 years. Point 0. The Younger Dryas Impact, the cosmic reset. If the Black Sea Deluge was a leaky faucet, this is a fire hose aimed at the face of the planet. Picture the Earth 12,800 years ago. The Ice Age is ending, the planet is warming, and humanity is thriving. Then, in a single heartbeat, the sky turns white. A barrage of cometary fragments, essentially a cosmic shotgun blast, slams into the North American ice sheet. The heat is so intense it doesn't just melt the ice, it vaporizes it. This isn't a slow rise in sea levels. It is a global tsunami of impossible magnitude, a wall of water and sludge rushing across the continents, followed instantly by a nuclear winter that lasts for 1,000 years. This is the Younger Dryas Impact hypothesis. For years, mainstream science laughed at it, but recently the laughter has stopped. Across 4 continents, geologists have found a distinct black mat layer in the soil, a thin line of carbon, ash, and platinum that marks a synchronized global burning event dated exactly to 12,800 years ago. Inside this layer, they found nanodiamonds, microscopic diamonds that can only be forged by the shockwave of a cosmic impact or a nuclear detonation. This event coincides precisely with the extinction of 75% of North America's megafauna and the sudden disappearance of the Clovis people. The implication is terrifying. It suggests that the global flood wasn't just about water. It was a complex cascading apocalypse, a comet strike, followed by a megaflood, meltwater pulse 1b, followed by a deep freeze. It implies that we are not the first sophisticated culture to walk this earth. We are simply the survivors of a reset. We are a species with amnesia, wandering through the ruins of a world we forgot we destroyed. The flood myths aren't just stories. They are the trauma warnings left by our ancestors, screaming at us across the millennia, "Watch the sky." So, here is the ultimatum. I've just given you the two biggest contenders for the end of the world: the slow, creeping terror of the Black Sea breach, point number one, or the sudden, violent cosmic execution of the Younger Dryas, point zero. I want you to go to the comments right now and pick your poison. Are these 10 myths just the exaggerated memories of a local flood in Turkey, or is the black mat layer proof that human civilization was nearly wiped out by a comet 12,000 years ago? Team Geology or Team Impact? I'll be down there arguing with the best of you. Make your case.